So finally, I'm back to my office, so I can teach in my office. But the bad news is that the coronavirus is spreading more rapidly recently. So I think it's not a good situation because the weather, it is getting colder, and then so that means the weather is changing, and then that means the virus can spread more quickly and widely. It's not a good situation, but I hope everyone stay healthy during this uncommon and then abnormal some period. So please be safe and please stay healthy. So in the previous class, I discussed about the exceptions in the pipeline process design. Also, I explained about the last design assignment. So the last design is the lab design lab number 4. So in the design lab number 4, you are requested to design pipeline processor. So I said that. So in the beginning of this course, I said the most important part in this course is the pipelining and the memory hierarchy. So that is actually the essential part in the computer processor and then the computer systems. So this computer pipelining, that is the part of CPU core and then memory hierarchy. So we will learn about the memory hierarchy and memory system in chapter 5. So memory system is also very critical in the computer system because the performance of a memory system determines the overall performance of computer system. So it's very important. Also core, the CPU core is also important because this CPU core. So in the chapter 4, we learned about the processor that is CPU core. It's also called the CPU core. So this CPU core is a brain of computer system. So that means this core receives every instruction from memory and I/O devices and also some operating system. And then all instructions are executed by this computer processor or core. So pipelining and then processor design is also very critical in this course. Okay. So also as I mentioned, I recommend you to start this lab assignment number 4 as quickly as possible. So start quickly because it may take a long time, but I believe design is not complex. The design, so you need to just fill some missing part in the top design of the pipeline processor, but the verification matters. So that means you may consume some long time verifying your design. So in the pipeline process architecture, you need to match the timing of the control signals, also the timing of the instruction flows. So and then they may be confusing. So for some student, I believe some students can easily understand how signals flow and then control signals flow through the pipeline stages. But for some students, it may be confusing. So try to start quickly for the start early for the this final lab assignment. And then in this time, I will discuss about the architectural simulator in the computer architecture for computer architecture research and or computer architecture study. And then I will go go into the chapter 5, it's the memory hierarchy of the computer system. Okay, so in this time I will discuss about the RISC-V simulation 2. So this is the computer architecture tools. So actually I show these figures in the start of the course, about this course. So this figure shows the every layer in computer systems. So in the first class of the discourse, I explained that the computer systems, a computer system is composed of many layers, and then in each layer, and then we apply some techniques called abstract. So abstract means that we just focused on the some part which is required to understand, but for the every other layers or other part, we just ignore the detailed content or detailed architecture of other layers. So, for example, if you study on the computer architecture or some architecture way of computer system, you can focus on this area. So, and then there are some interfaces between some neighbor layers like operating system or microarchitecture. So in this case, you can understand just the interfaces between two layers, such as, so what is the interface between operating system or architecture? So interface means the signals that control the computer hardware or some interrupt signals from operating system. That is the kind of interfaces between operating system and computer architecture. So in the abstraction, for the abstraction, we just hide the details that is not needed to understand. So that is just the black box. So, and then we just try to understand some communications or protocols interfaced between layers. Then the problem is, so let us assume that you are working on this computer architecture field, and then you want to add your new idea. It's a very good idea in the computer architecture design or computer processor design, and then some new memory architecture of the computer system. So how can we add this idea? So this is the computer system. So it's a monitor, and then some desktop. In the desktop, you can find the CPU, and then you can also find the storage like SSD or main memory in the desktop. Then how can we add our own idea in this computer system? Actually, for hardware. So for the software, we can just modify our code or our program code to add our idea. Then we can compile our code and then this to execute our application in the computer system. And then if the compiled code works correctly, then we can verify our idea is working. That's it. But for the hardware, it's not easy because it's not software. So actually in the first class of this course, I explained that computer CPU is composed of billions of transistors. So this is very complex hardware. And then if we want to add some new ideas in this complex hardware world, then it's impossible. So how can we add our idea? So I mentioned that for software, we can modify software. Right? We cannot modify hardware easily, but for the software, you can modify software easily. Actually, it's not easy, but we can modify software. That's possible. So I'm saying that if the behavior of a computer processor is implemented in software, then we can add our ideas onto this software. That's possible because it's software, not real hardware. But this software emulates the real behavior of hardware. So for example, in the pipeline, the 5-stage pipeline processor, so we can, so it is possible. So you can make a software that emulate means that just copy한다고. So you can write the code that emulate the behavior of each stage of pipeline process. Right? It's not difficult. It may not be easy, but it's not difficult. So if we make some software that emulate this behavior of 5-stage pipeline, and then if we modify this software, then we can add our ideas. So this software is called the simulator. So simulation means that is not real hardware, but that is the not real operation, but this simulation is just emulate the real behavior of a system or hardware. That is the simulator. So actually this figure shows some real hardware that is used for my research. So actually this hardware is used for storage device development like SSD. So actually I will you know that the real SSD, the NVMe SSD, the size of this NVMe SSD is very small. But if you see this board, actually this is the main board of the computer system. This is a real ATX size main board. And then on the PCI bus of this main board, you can find the very big board. But this big board is used for developing some new ideas for storage devices like SSD. So it's also possible that we can manufacture some real board or real hardware, and then this hardware is programmable. If we use the FPGA, FPGA means FPGA. So FPGA means field programmable gate array. So if we use the FPGA, then you can program also hardware, but this performance of this programmed hardware is very lower than some real ASIC or chip, real hardware chip. But anyway, we can program the hardware with the FPGA. It may be possible, but it's also very difficult. So compared to the very small size of NVMe SSD, we can find very large board, and then this large board include the very large FPGA or some high performance core to emulate the behavior of SSD. So then it's also possible that we can use the real hardware or real board to add our own good ideas on the computer system, but it's not always possible. So in this case, we use the simulator, and then this simulator is the software. Okay. So actually, for the computer architecture research, some simulators can be used for computer architecture research. So and then this type of simulator is called the architecture simulator. And then this architecture simulator emulate the operation of computer processors or memory system. So that is software. Okay. In chapter 2, we learned about the instruction of RISC-V. So we learned. So in the chapter 2, we learned which instruction is defined for RISC-V processor, and then also we learned the behavior or definition of RISC-V instructions. So for example, we add instruction x1, x2, x3. So I believe everyone knows the meaning of this RISC-V instruction. So that means the behavior of this instruction is defined. The problem is that we don't have any RISC-V computers, and recently the RISC-V computers were developed, but this computer is only available in United States. So, and then this is not a commercial computer system. So and then this computer system is used for research or study. Anyway, we don't have any RISC-V computers. That's the problem. So if we, even if we write the RISC-V assembly code, so we cannot verify our code. So how can we verify our assembly code in the that support the RISC-V ISA? So in order to support this some assembly execution or assembly simulation, some researchers make RISC-V assembly simulators. So if we use this simulator, then we can execute our RISC-V assembly code in this simulator, and then also we can see some contents of the register file or contents of the memory using these simulators. So I already explained this slide. So solution. So problem is that we don't have RISC-V computers yet. We have x86 systems, but we don't have any RISC-V computers. So what is the solution? So we can use cross-compiler. So cross-compiler means that, so actually, so if there is x86 CPU, then if we use the compiler on this x86 CPU, then this compiler translates our high-level language into x86 assembly code and machine code. But we need the RISC-V assembly code. So even though this compiler runs on the x86 CPU, then some compilers like RISC-V cross-compiler can translate the high-level language into the RISC-V assembly code. and RISC-V binary code. That means machine code. Translate from the high-level language like C, because Python is the interpreter language. So this question, if the RISC-V binary is generated, then can we execute this RISC-V binary on the x86 CPU? 대답을 해보죠. So this type of compiler is called the cross compiler. That means this cross compiler generates the different type of ISA assembly code or binary code in the some different computer system. Like so, if we use the RISC-V cross compiler, then this cross compiler can generate the RISC-V binary code in the x86 CPU, like a desktop or a normal desktop or laptop. Then this generated binary code can be executed on the x86 CPU. 가능할까요? Yes or no? 네, 대답이 없네요. The answer is no, because I said this is RISC-V binary code. So that means this code includes the RISC-V machine code, machine instructions. So these machine instructions cannot be executed on x86 CPUs. Also, this cannot be executed on ARM CPUs because ISA is different. But why do we need the cross compiler? So this cross compiler can generate the assembly code from the high-level language. So this cross compiler can generate the RISC-V assembly code from the high-level language on the x86 CPU. So that means if we write the C code, and then we can translate this C code into the RISC-V assembly code using the cross compiler. Also, we don't have any RISC-V computer system, but we can virtualize this RISC-V computer system on the x86 CPU. So I believe many students know about the VirtualBox or VMware or Parallels in Apple's computer system. It's a MacBook, Mac systems. So VMware, VirtualBox, or Parallels. So what is this software? This software is the virtualization software. So that means this is the computer hardware, but this virtual, this is called the hypervisor actually. So this virtualization software emulate this hardware system on the real hardware. So that means the operating system, this operating system is called the guest operating system. This guest operating system can run on this virtualization environment, like a VirtualBox or VMware. So that means we can run many different operating systems on this virtualization software. That's right, that's possible. So if you use the Parallels, then you can run Windows operating system on your Mac, Apple, MacBook, Mac Pro, Mac system, right? But the most commonly used virtualization tool just support the same ISA virtualization. So that means, for example, the VirtualBox runs on the x86 computer system can just run the x86 operating systems, not different kind of operating system that runs on the different kind of ISA instruction set architecture. So that means if the operating system is compiled in ARM ISA, then this operating system can run on the VirtualBox or VMware that, that runs on the x86 CPU. But we can use other virtualization tool called the QEMU. So this QEMU is the actually open source software. So if we use the QEMU, then we can learn different the operating system that support the different ISA. So also this QEMU also support the RISC-V ISA. So if we use the QEMU, then we can learn the RISC-V code or RISC-V operating system on these QEMU applications. Also, there are many RISC-V assembly simulators, and then I said this RISC-V ISA is the open source ISA. That means it's free to use this RISC-V instruction set architecture. So the academia communities or even the industry communities developed its own RISC-V simulation tools, and then they also publicize their simulator or some RISC-V tools in public with the open source software. So this is the RISC-V assembly simulators like Jupyter, LAS, LVA, RISC-V. You can use the RISC-V QEMU, and then you can also use this web-based RISC-V assembly simulators. So if you are interested, then you can visit this website or GitHub repository. Then you can download this simulator, and then you can run the RISC-V assembly simulators. Okay. This is the screenshot of Jupyter. So it's very comfortable, convenient. That means if you write the RISC-V assembly code like this, then this simulator just execute the instructions line by line. Also, this simulator shows the content of the register file or memory when for the line by line execution. Okay, it's very convenient too. Also, we can use the graphical architecture simulators. So, and then this simulator is this is the actually I found this simulator on the GitHub. Then this simulator is called the RIPE. Then this RIPE can run the RISC-V assembly code, and then this simulator shows some execution of the instructions in some graphical environment. So I captured some README. I captured this RIPES 2. So as you can see, you can find it's very similar to the 5-stage pipeline processor we learned in the class. Right. So if you use this tool, then I think you can understand more easily the architecture of the RISC-V processors. So okay. So I also installed. It's just so you can just unzip the downloaded RIPE software simulator on your x86 computer systems. And then also I installed this RIPES. I believe this RIPE is shared. So if you use this tool, then you can see some graphical what's that graphical structure or some then connected wires in the single cycle processor or 5-stage pipeline processor. But you need to know that this structure of the processor is different from what we learned in this course. So actually, I taught about this process architecture based on the our textbook, like computer organization design textbook. But the architecture of this RIPE simulator is a little bit different from what we learned in this course, but it's very similar. So if you click this icon, then you can change the configuration of the processors. Then I believe you can find that this is the single cycle processor, and then 5-stage processor, and 5-stage processor without hazard detection, and then 5-stage processor without boarding or hazard detection. So you can configure the process architecture differently using this tool. So I'm showing this single cycle RISC-V processor, but I believe it's very similar to our single cycle processor, right? The different thing is the annotation tool. So only difference is branch instruction. So in our textbook, the branch instruction is reserved by this ALU using the subtraction operation. But this simulator show that the branch instruction is independently handled by this branch instruction logic. So also the advantage of this simulator tool is that you can also write the RISC-V assembly code, and then this tool translate your assembly code into the machine code or the binary code. So load example assembly like a fractional function. So this is some example code, factorial code. So you can find the RISC-V assembly code in the left side window, and then this right side window shows the translated machine code. So if you use this binary, if you select the binary code, then you can find the translated binary data, binary code here. Then if you push this progress icon, then you can find the instruction is how the instruction is executed in the processor. So, and then also this is shown in this single cycle processors. So also you can check select the 5-stage processor design. Okay, this 5-stage processor design. And then also another different thing of this simulator is that this simulator support the RV32IM. So and actually in the textbook we learned about the RV64I. So that is the also some different. So if we select the 5-stage pipeline processor, then you can see the 5-stage pipeline processor design here. Also, the different thing is the branch instruction is here. So actually in the textbook, the branch instruction is reserved after this register 5, but in this simulator, the branch instruction is reserved in EX stage. That is the different thing in this simulator. So this is the assembly. So if you can you see that this here? So if we push this progress icon, then you can find that. So instructions are located in this instruction. So this is the PC program counter. So instruction is in the IF stage, and then this instruction in the ID stage here. So here. So we can easily see how instruction flows these pipeline stages using this simulator. It's very amazing. It's an amazing tool. So you can see this flush. So why this flush happen in this pipeline structure, pipeline architecture? So you can find the instructions. Oh, you can find the instructions here. So why flush happens in this processor? 그쵸? Right. This is the jump instruction. So branch instruction, jump instruction. So and then jump instruction is executed in EX stage. That means so if this jump instruction is executed, then we need to flush the following 2 stages: instruction fetch and then instruction decoding. That's why we can find NOP or flushy in these pipeline stages. But you need to note that this pipeline architecture is different from what we learned in the textbook. So in the textbook, we learned that the branch instruction can be reserved in ID stage, not EX stage. So you need to also note that this architecture processor design is a little bit different. But I believe that if you use this tool, this RIPE tool, then I believe you can understand the pipeline architecture or pipeline design more easily, because this simulator shows the pipeline design and instruction flows graphically. Okay, so this is very good tool. I like this tool very much. Also, you can find the content of the registry file here. So you can find the content of the memory with these icons. Okay. So do you have any questions about the computer architecture simulator? So that is a software. So that is the software. Then, so we can use this a good simulator tool for our study or our research. Okay. Okay. Then let's take the pub keys. So we did not take pub keys for a long time, but I think sometimes we need to take the pub keys for recommending students to attend this online course, online lecture. So this is the pub keys for today's class. Then I will generate. Okay. I forgot to generate the pub keys section in the Blackboard. That's the problem. But just write down these answers in in your note, and then I will generate some pub keys assessment in the Blackboard after the class. So you can submit your answer in the Blackboard. So this is today's pub keys. It's very simple, right? Okay, I think it's enough. Okay, so so now we complete the pipelining of the processor, and then now, so we will learn about the memory system or memory hierarchy of a computer system. So this is the chapter 5 of the textbook. So, and then as I mentioned, this is also very important part in this course: pipelining, memory hierarchy, and instructions. So three important parts in this course. So okay. Yeah. So what is the memory? Memory in the computer system. So why do we need memory system in the computer system? So memory is storage space for our user data. So we store our some programming data. Actually, all kinds of data, instructions, program code, like operating system code, was data, text data, was temporary data. So all kinds of data is stored in the memory. So computer is just a calculator. Actually, the computer is some machine that execute the instructions that use the data in the memory. Okay, so that means if so, in order to execute some instructions in the core or processor, then this data stored in the memory should be transferred or fetch it to the computer core, right? Like add x1, x2, x3. So this is the execution, and these are the operands of this execution. So we know that this add instruction needs data from the register file, and then register file is also it's a kind of memory devices, because the register file also stores the data. And then also we know that we use the load instruction to fetch data from main memory. So that means there are two kinds of memory. Actually, in the processor, we learned different types of memory already, because register file is also memory, because we can store some temporary data or in the register file. Also, there are two different types of memory, like IMEM and DMEM, like instruction memory and data memory. So that means the instructions are stored in the instruction memory, and then data is stored in the data memory. So actually, in the processor part, we already learned three different kinds of memory: register file, instruction memory, and data memory. But we learn more about this different level of the memory. So I mentioned different levels. So that's why this memory system is called the memory hierarchy. So hierarchy means 계층구조 in Korean. So actually, when we use this hierarchy terminology, that means this hierarchy means just like some old like 계층구조. It represents some old level of the people, like a king, or under the king there is the 귀족이야 그런 거죠. Some different levels, and then normal people and slaves. So this is the kind of hierarchy. So in the computer system, different types of memory is employed in the computer system, and then these different levels of memory is called the memory hierarchy. So we will learn about this memory hierarchy in the chapter 5. Okay, this is the introduction part of the memory system. So let's talk about the locality. So actually this locality is the very critical property of our data, real data. So locality is translated in Korean something like 지역성, but how can we understand the locality? So locality means that some data or some event is found or event happens in the in local level, not global level. So that is the locality. So the memory hierarchy exploit this locality in our data. So this locality means program, our some normal application access the small portion, just a small portion. That is the some local level of their address space at any time. What does that mean? So this is the program, this application. So this application just access the small group of data, and then usually this small group of data is accessed repeatedly, or if some data is accessed, then the neighbor data or close data is accessed by application. That is the property of locality. So I said some data is repeatedly accessed. So then this property is called the temporal locality. So temporal means that it's the kind of time-based property. So that means if the one data, a certain data is accessed by program, this same data can be accessed in the future. And then this locality is called the temporal locality. And then also there are different kinds of locality. There is the spatial locality. So that means if some data is accessed by the application or program, then with high probability, this program can access the neighbor data, like here. That is called the spatial locality. So I said this locality property of locality is very important because the memory hierarchy is designed considering this temporal locality and spatial locality. So temporal locality means that the same data is repeatedly accessed by program. So we can easily find this example of this temporal locality. What is this? Loop iteration. When the loop is repeatedly executed by computer processor, so that means the instructions in the loop is repeatedly requested by computer processor. So I said that instruction is also kind of data. And then this instruction is stored in the instruction memory. So if the loop is repeatedly accessed, the same data, same instruction is repeatedly accessed. Also, we can find this temporal locality example in our a normal code, if we use some variable like a, int a in the code, like a constant variable or constant values, then we know that these constant values or global parameters are repeatedly used by programs. So that is the also example of temporal locality. So you need to remember this definition of the temporal locality. It's very important. So data is repeatedly reused or accessed. Then spatial locality. Spatial locality means that if a certain data is accessed by a program, then this same program will or can access the closed data. Then what is the example of this spatial locality? Array. Right. If the A0 is accessed by a certain program, and then this program will access the A1 or A2 with high probability. That's true. So also we learned that in the array data is accessed by base address plus offset for this array. So that means the neighbor array element is located in the some closed area of the computer memory system. It's a memory. So that is the spatial locality. So this is very frequently observed in our program. That's true, right? Also, I will explain more about this locality and then some real world example in the cache memory, cache part of this memory hierarchy, okay? But you need to know the definition of temporal locality and then spatial locality, right? Okay. So I said the memory hierarchy is designed in order to exploit this locality in data. So, and especially the cache memory exploit the data locality in our program. So how can we use this locality? So actually we store our all data in the storage devices like hard disk drive or SSD. So this storage device is the non-volatile memory. So non-volatile memory means that the data stored in this memory is kept even though power is turned off on the computer system. That's why this memory is called the non-volatile memory. Now how about the DRAM? The data stored in the DRAM is erased and flushed away if the power is turned off in the computer system. So this memory is called the volatile memory. So then our data is, so because of this property, our data is stored in the storage devices. So the storage device is cheaper than our main memory. So that means the density of storage device is denser than the density of main memory. So how can we access the data in the storage, and then how can we access how the processor access the data in the main memory? So when we put up the computer system, then the operating system or firmware first transfer the data stored in the storage device into the main memory, and then the computer core also fetch the data from this main memory and then execute the instruction. So what does that mean? actually we know that the size of the storage is very large. Recently, most of the storage we use like 1 terabyte of storage devices, but for the main memory, so the common main memory size is like 4 gigabyte or 8 gigabyte. So compared to this 1 terabyte of storage device, the size of main memory is very small. But we don't need, when the program is executed or launched on the computer system, this program usually do not require all data in the storage, right? The storage device store the very large size of data in the 1 terabyte of space. But usually the program just access the gigabyte, if some very big, large program. So like gigabyte or some kilobyte of data from the storage. So that means just a small part of data is accessed from the storage, and then it's just stored in the RAM, is the main memory. And then computer processor access the data in the RAM and then execute the instruction. So that is kind of a memory hierarchy. Even though the computer system has the very large memory space, but this large memory space is slow. Also, normally the computer program just takes the small part of data stored in this large storage devices. So computer program just access the small part of data and then transport this small part of data in the main memory. The speed, the performance of this main memory is higher than the performance of storage. We already know that. Storage device is very slow, but main memory is fast. And then the data in this main memory is repeatedly accessed by this computer processor. So that means it's a locality. So temporal locality or spatial locality is exploited by this memory hierarchy. Okay. Also, this memory hierarchy has the multiple levels, like as shown in this figure. So actually, this memory hierarchy is composed. This is the processor, and then the memory system, which is closest to this processor, is the register file. So register file is very fast, and then the size is very small, and then you can find the instruction memory and data memory in the processor, and then actually this instruction memory and then data memory is called the level cache. So just name, and then also the cache has the multiple levels like level 2, level 3, and then also you can find the DRAM is the main memory, and then under the DRAM there is the storage like HDD or SSD. So this is the different levels of memory system, and then this different levels of memory system is called the memory hierarchy. The higher level, upper level of the memory hierarchy is located to the, is close to the processor. So that means the register file is the closest memory in the computer system. The closest is closest to the processor. Right. So this is the upper level. This is the lower level. And then upper level memory is located close to the processor. That means the processor first try to find the data in the upper level memory. So actually the register file is managed by programmers, right, or compilers. So the register file is, but the other levels of memory unit is managed by computer hardware. That means level 1 cache, level 2 or level 3 caches, or the DRAM memories are managed by computer hardware. So in this hierarchy, the upper level memory, such as the instruction memory and data memory, the computer processor just try to find the required data in the upper level memory. Then if data is found in this upper level memory, then this event is called the hit. So hit means the computer processor tried to find the data in this upper level memory, but if data is found in this upper level memory, that is the hit. If data is not found in this upper level memory, then this event is called the miss. So cache hit or cache miss is will be frequently used in this chapter 5. Okay. So data exists in memory, that is hit, not found in the memory, that is miss. So in the memory hierarchy, if the data is not found in the upper level memory, for example, level 1 cache, then this data is searched in the low level memory. So if data is not found in the level 1 cache, then computer system or computer hardware try to find this requested data in the level 2 cache. So computer hardware accesses this level 2 cache and then request data from the level 2 cache. So it's the same. If data is found in the level 2 cache, that is the hit. That event is called the hit. So that means this hit is called the level 2 cache hit. If data is not found, it's the miss. Then also the request is sent to the level 3 cache. So this process is repeated until the data is found in the storage. If data is not found in the data main memory, then the data is requested to the storage devices. So that is also, so that's how the memory hierarchy works in the computer system. Okay. Then let's talk about the memory technology. Oh, it's just we have just 5 minutes. So why doing what I put? So why do we use the different levels of the memory? Because the memory has the divergent properties in performance and density, also cost. So I said that the register file is the fastest memory, and then but the size of this register file is very small. How about the level 1 cache? Level 1 cache is also fast, and the size is small. Level 2 cache, the lower level memory, lower level cache, is so like medium. medium speed, but the size also has a medium. How about the DRAM? So we know that DRAM is faster than the storage, but compared to this level of cache memory, the performance of DRAM is very low. So that means the latency from DRAM is high, the speed is low. So DRAM is slow, but size is large. How about HDD, hard disk drive? It's very much slow, and then it's very large. So we can find some what is it? Trend. You can find trend in this memory hierarchy. Upper level memory normally fast and small. Lower level memory is slow and large. How about the cost? Fast. That means the cost is high. That means it's expensive. But the lower level memory, the performance is low. That means it's cheap. The cost is low. So different levels of memory have a divergent properties or divergent characteristics in performance, density, size, and cost. Density is related to the size. So that means our memory is not ideal. If the memory is ideal, that means the memory is fast and the memory density is very high, the size is very large. But we don't have this ideal memory. This is the real world. So real world does not have any ideal devices. That's why we work hard to for some research area to develop the better computer system, better architecture in the memory system. Okay, so this is some trend of the memory hierarchy. So you need to also remember this trend of memory property of a memory system in the different levels of memory hierarchy. And this slide just to summarize some representative memory devices like latency. This is the latency, data access latency, and then this is the cost. So if as I said, if the memory is the performance is good, the cost is very high. The performance is low, the cost is also low. I believe you need to stop here. Oh, so a little bit slow. So, okay, okay. So I'll stop here. But in the today's class, we discussed a very important concept or important topics in the memory hierarchy or memory system. So you need to remember the locality of data in the computer system or applications. Also, the memory system has the memory hierarchy. That means the memory units or memory systems is composed of different levels of memory component or memory devices. And then that is because different kinds of a memory device has the divergent characteristics in performance, density, and cost. That's why we designed the memory hierarchy in the computer system. Okay. I will also post the homework assignment for chapter 4, the processor design, processor architecture, the Blackboard today. It's today evening. Okay. Do you have any questions? 댄스하다는 거는 그러니까는 유닛 에어리어, 그러니까는 똑같은 에어리어에 저장되는 데이터의 사이즈가 크다는 겁니다. 그러니까는 뭐 예를 들어서 원 제곱 센티미터 에어리어, 그건 너무 큰데 원 제곱 밀리미터 에어리어에 뭐 저장되는 데이터 양이 더 크다라는 거죠. 덴스하다는 거. 그러니까 똑같은 넓이에 저장할 수 있는 데이터의 그 양이 메모리마다 달라요. 뭐 여기서 이제 SRAM 같은 경우에는 더 적게 저장이 되고요. 뭐랄까, 디스크나 플래시 메모리 SSD에 쓰는 그런 데는 그 똑같은 에어리어 안에 더 많은 데이터를 저장할 수 있는 거죠. 그러니까는 우리가 이제 SSD, NVMe SSD 뜯어보면 뭐 NVMe SSD 그냥 그 칩으로 이루어져 있잖아요. 근데 그 칩 안에 지금 막 1TB, 뭐 이분 2TB 데이터가 저장이 될 수가 있는 거잖아요. 그거 말하는 거죠. D램도 보면은 우리가 DIMM 뜯어서 보면은 다 칩으로 이루어져 있죠. 그 똑같은 칩 에어리어 안에 저장할 수 있는 데이터의 양이 메모리마다 다르다는 거고, 그 메모리가 그 데이터가 더 많이 저장되면 이게 또 덴스하다는 거죠. 됐나요? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for listening, and then see you in the next class.